I never really believed in ghosts. Sure, I'd seen my share of horror movies, heard a few creepy stories around campfires, but in my mind, those were just entertainment. The kind of thing you could switch off and forget about once the credits rolled. That changed in the winter of 2004, when I bought a 2-story colonial house in a small New England town. I was 28 back then, fresh out of a rough breakup, desperate for a fresh start. The house was old built, sometime in the late 1800s, but it had charm. White siding, green shutters, a big wraparound porch. It sat on a quiet road just outside of town, surrounded by skeletal maple trees that creaked when the wind pushed through. It was cheap, suspiciously cheap. The realtor called it a motivated sale, and I didn't press too hard for details. I signed the papers in January. By February, I was living there alone, with my dog Maxan, old black lab who'd been my shadow since college. The first week was uneventful. I unpacked boxes, painted the living room, learned which windows stuck and which floorboards groaned. The place smelled faintly of cedar and something sweeter, like old perfume that had soaked into the wood. It was the second week when small things began. The first time it happened, I was in the kitchen washing dishes. Max started growling low in his throat, staring down the dark hallway that led to the dining room. His fur bristled. I figured maybe a raccoon was outside the window, but when I went to check, nothing, just bare trees and snow. That night, as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard faint tapping sounds coming from inside the walls. Not mice, not the scratching kind, more like knuckles knocking, slow and deliberate. 3 taps, then silence. I told myself old houses made noises, would contracted in the cold, pipes rattled. I didn't want to admit that the sound felt intentional. Whispers in the hall one night in March. I was up late reading in bed. Around midnight, I heard what I swore was a woman's voice saying my name from the hallway. It wasn't loud. It was almost like it was spoken right next to my ear, but muffled, as if coming through a thin wall. Evan, my skin prickled. Max lifted his head from the foot of the bed and stared at the door, ears up. I got up, checked the hall. Nothing. The lights hummed faintly. The air smelled faintly of that same sweet perfume. It became a pattern after that, soft murmurs, faint, as if they were just out of earshot. Sometimes I couldn't make out words, just the cadence of someone speaking. Other times, my name, always. From the hallway, the staircase, or the dining room. The dining room. By April, I'd started to notice something else. I could never quite get the dining room warm. The rest of the house would be cozy, but step into that room, and the temperature dropped by at least 10 degrees. No drafts, no broken windows, just a coldness that settled in my bones. One Saturday morning, I was dusting the big oak table in there when I noticed the chandelier swaying slightly. The windows were closed. No fan was on. It swung gently at first, then harder, like someone had given it a push. I stood there, frozen, watching it until it slowed again. That was the first time I said aloud, "If someone's here, please stop." And it did. Escalation. By summer, the house's behavior had escalated. Doors would open and close on their own. I'd hear footsteps upstairs when I was in the kitchen. Max refused to go into the dining room entirely. He'd stand in the doorway, hackles raised, and bark at nothing. One evening in July, I came home late from work. I unlocked the door and immediately noticed something off. The house was too quiet. Normally Max would come running, nails clicking on the hardwood. But this time, nothing. I found him hiding under my bed, trembling as I coaxed him out. I heard it again, footsteps upstairs. Slow, steady, crossing from one bedroom to another. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the door and searched the house. Every window was locked from the inside. No one was there. The figure. It wasn't until September that I saw it for the first time. I was carrying laundry up from the basement. As I reached the top of the stairs, I glanced toward the hallway and froze. A woman stood at the far end, half in shadow. She wore a long faded dress, something old-fashioned, high-necked, with lace at the cuffs. Her hair was dark, pinned up. Her face was pale, almost gray, with deep-set eyes that seemed too dark for her skin. She was watching me. I blinked, and she was gone. I stood there for a long time, holding the laundry basket so tightly my fingers ached. Research that night, I finally looked into the house's history. Turns out, it had been in the same family for generations. The last owner had died in Eton, elderly woman named Margaret Bellamy. Before her, her mother had lived there, and her mother before that. Buried in an old newspaper archive, I found something else. In 1923, a young woman named Eliza Bellamy had died in the house under mysterious circumstances. The article didn't say much, but it mentioned a family dispute and an unfortunate accident in the dining room. I stared at the faded black and white photo of her. The dress was the same. Night terrors after that. The activity became more targeted. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of my bedroom door creaking open. Sometimes I'd hear footsteps cross the room and stop right beside my bed. One night, I woke to find my bedsheets pulled halfway off me, as if someone had been trying to drag them away. Another time, I felt the mattress sink beside me, like someone had sat down. The air went icy. I didn't move. ICOULDN. Single quotes. The breaking point. It was in late November when it finally broke me. I'd fallen asleep on the couch in the living room. Sometime around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of the front door slamming shut. I bolted upright, heart pounding. From the corner of my eye, I saw her standing in the dining room doorway, closer this time. Her face wasn't just pale, it was wrong. Her eyes were black pits, her mouth too wide, lips drawn back in a grimace that showed every tooth. She stepped forward. The lights flickered violently. The chandelier began swinging again, faster, clinking like it might tear itself from the ceiling. I grabbed Max, ran upstairs, and locked the bedroom door. 4 hours. I heard footsteps pacing outside the room, slow and steady, until dawn broke. Moved out 3 weeks later. Packing was a nightmare. Things would vanish from where I set them down. The dining room stayed cold, even as I worked up a sweat hauling boxers. On my last day there, I walked through the house one final time. When I stepped into the dining room, I swear I heard a woman's voice, soft and almost sad, say, "Don't go." I didn't look back. Aftermath. It's been over a decade since I left that house. I live 2 states away now, in a small apartment with plenty of sunlight and thin walls that let in the noise of neighbors' noise I welcome. But sometimes, late at night, I still smell that faint perfume, and when I do, I know she's still with me.